Finished reading this book. It's called Nervous Conditions. It's by Tsistsi Dangarembga. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. And let me read what it means, nervous conditions. So she quotes Franz Fanon's book, The Wretched of the Earth. And it's not the book, it's actually a preface by Jean-Paul Sartre. And in the preface, Jean-Paul Sartre wrote, "The condition of native is a nervous condition." And so in this book, it's not one that can be read on surface level, because there are very many themes, arguably, that emanate from the book. And it was written in 1988, and its setting is in colonial times in Zimbabwe. And Frantz Fanon was writing for Algeria. And this introduction, or the preface by Jean-Paul Sartre, was in 1961. I have had the privilege of reading Jean-Paul Sartre preface, and of course these people were Marxists. So in her book, in his book, Jean-Paul Sartre, in his preface, sorry, to be correct, he says that the natives, the people who have been educated by the French and they have been exposed to the European culture by being given an education, are suffering from a nervous condition, because they are unable to be, they're in a psychological crisis, because they do not know what to adopt, whether it is to adopt the French way of thinking or their native way of thinking. They're in a very psychological crisis. And he argues in his preface, and I think that's what Fanon argued, that it is the people who are the indigenous people that are able to liberate Algeria, or even Africa as a continent, from the Europeans. That if these people who have been educated by the English, they have been anglicized, or by the French, that they have been made to have an adoption of the French culture, these individuals, if they are given an opportunity to lead, then people are still not free from their colonizers. And so they argue that these people who have been exposed to the French culture are suffering from a nervous condition. And so I think Tsitsi, in her work, also adopts this view that was forwarded by Jean-Paul Sartre, and to argue that the woman who is educated in colonial times, or in this case in Zimbabwe, is she is suffering from a nervous condition, because she has two worldviews. One is very patriarchal, in the sense that the man is the one who is able to make decisions in the society, and she as a woman, with the exposure that she's getting through the education, there's a promise of emancipation and liberation, that she can be able to work and even earn more than most women and men, and she can be able to work and be able to know this language of the foreigner. And so in this book, we're met with different people who are suffering from this nervous condition. The person who introduces this book, or the narrator of this book, is Tambu. And Tambu says, and he starts this story by saying, "I was not sorry when my brother died." And the reason she starts this way is because she's able to have an access to education after the brother died. So the reason she can be able to have an education is because the brother died. That's the only reason. And now we follow her having this ability to be able to express herself and really wanting to have an education. And then now she's exposed to education, and she's anglicized in some way, but she still maintains her Shona way of life, in the sense that she does not speak, and if the man is speaking, she only speaks after the man has spoken to her. While, and even during that time, she is now exposed to this idea of Christianity. And I call it an idea because I do not believe it is Christianity at all, but in the book it is portrayed as Christianity, where sin is considered as a black thing in the sense that it is a bad thing. And so her being a woman and her being black is a double tragedy for her in school, because it is not expected that of such a person that they're able to do well in school. And so in that whole context, she's trying to maintain her way of life, speaking Shona and all these things, and while still learning English and still learning all and trying to learn all these other languages like Latin. And within all these things, she comes to the conclusion, after an episode where her uncle, who is educated in London, proposes that her parents should get married, and married in the Christian way after they have been considered. Married for 19 years. The wife was considered the wife to the husband Jeremiah, who are the parents. And in this context, then the reason for their marriage is to make them stop living in sin, because they had not married the Christian way. And if you're not married the Christian way, then you're living in sin. So they had to do it in the Christian way. And she, Tamudzai, refuses to go to this wedding because she feels it's a belittling of her parents. And then again, as she continues to learn, and towards the end of the book, she is feeling as though she is being brainwashed by this colonial education. It's an erosion of her values as a Shona, but still she continues to pursue her education. It's a nervous condition. What women are brought to think about men in the society, especially in the colonization period, while still trying to get an education. And the question is, what is the education for? Because her aunt has a master's degree, but it is not valued. Her opinion is not valued. And she has to submit herself to her husband. Do I like it as a Christian? Nah. But is it an interesting book? Yeah. So you can go and get it. Nervous conditions.